it's tough. This is going to be a hard off season for me personally, I can say, and I hope it's hard for our players because, um, you know, I have to say that what we did wasn't good enough, and that um, we aren't going to accept this. And it's a couple guys asked me like, "Are you watching the playoffs right now?" I don't like watching the playoffs right now. I don't enjoy that because it's kind of grates at me the fact that we're not in the playoffs. So what people have to say right now, to be honest with you, is not really that important in my opinion. What's important right now is what we're going to do moving forward and how we're going to make ourselves better. And the players have a responsibility. We know what my responsibility is going to be, Jeff, our whole gang, and along with the coaches and their responsibilities, and the players to make themselves better. But it's so easy because the reason I'm saying it's going to be a difficult off season is because I said last year talk is cheap, and here we go again. But it's our responsibility. We'll talk all we have to talk and talk about getting better. But at the end of the day, we've got to prove it next year again. Right now, we love 1 through 9. Really, I was talking to my wife. We had a little meeting, and we kind of talked at one point last week, and we kind of went through the drafts and said, boy, if any one of these guys were here, we would be happy. And it's always going to be, if you had 7, you love 6 players. If you had 5, you love 4 players. So, we'll get someone good there. We'll find a good player there. And, the great thing is we've been around together now for a year. We as a staff have been together, working together, and I think we'll do a better job in this draft. Having Scott Skiles as our coach now for a year, I think he knows more about us. We know more about him even. And, we want him to be a part of this process. It's a player that we want him to like along with us. And as I said, that guy needs to be on the floor and helping us win games next year. Here's what we want to do. We want to get to the point of acquiring some kind of flexibility. And once we gain that flexibility, we want to put a good team on the floor. But I keep saying that's not at any cost. And right now, I think if you look at our roster to a certain extent, we have a good team, but maybe the costs are a little higher than they should be. I think we probably all agree with that. So, let's get to the point, get our flexibility, put a good quality product on the floor, a good team on the floor, but not at any cost. Because if you can do that, if you can get to the point of saying, now we have a good team, not at any cost, still keep some flexibility, then you have a team that you can maybe make good to great. Once you say, we have a good team, but we don't have any flexibility, there's no way you can make that team great. Nothing's changed for us. Our goal is to keep both those guys if we can. It's going to be difficult for us. We know that. We know realistically it is going to be, but who knows what's going to happen moving forward. So never discount anything. Something could happen that could create some room for us, and you have no idea what the market's going to be like this summer also. They're both restricted. So I think the market will play itself out, and we'll evaluate those situations and see what happens. 34 wins is not good enough, and we have to have that kind of mentality. I think that's got to seep through our entire organization. The important thing is for our players to feel it as much as Scott and I are feeling it. I think they are. I hope they are, but it's necessary that they do. I'm glad you asked because, this isn't all – I don't want to stand up here and say gloom and doom. This isn't good enough. 34 wins isn't good enough because, it's interesting. We had a visiting coach just last week come in and visit with Kelvin Sampson, and a guy that's been around the pro game a lot as an observer, kind of a little sniff in the NBA as a player. But I was so happy that sat down with him. This is the day before we leave for Indiana, our last practice of the season. And he and I were sitting up in the Cousins Center together, and he said, John, I think you guys have a winning culture here. And he goes, I know you probably feel like you need to change your roster and some other things need to happen. He said, but I can feel a winning culture here. And, man, that made me feel so good. And he said, and I made a point to him. He talked about our practice, and I said, I'm going to tell you, there's most 34-win teams aren't practicing like this the last day. And there isn't this professional atmosphere. There isn't this kind of level of concentration. And I think he talked about, meeting the people in our organization, how he was treated as a guest in our building, those sort of things. I mean, really, if you say, what would I like to see after year one, it's people saying that exact same kind of thing. There's a winning culture here. He can feel a winning culture. And I think so, those kind of things happen for us. And I think, I read some of the players' comments after the season. I think guys do realize that we're very, very serious about this. And we're only going to take one thing, and that's going to be winning and success. And I think that mindset maybe has started to change a little bit, and I hope players do feel a real sense of accountability this off season. And because I can tell you right now that Scott Skiles does, and I do.